everyone. This is Molly, and welcome back to Heartbeat Narratives. Today's guest is someone that I've known for about 10 years. We met back when I was a student at the University of Hawaii, and it's my friend Otto. You have so many different interests. I think you're a very resourceful person, and I think we'll get into all of those techniques and things that make up the fabric of your life. And I just wanted to invite you on and thank you for doing this. It's been a long time in the making.
Thank you for having me, Molly.
So to start everything off, where is home for you?
So I'm originally from Europe, from Germany. I guess you can consider that to be my original home. And then Hawaii became my home for the past 12 years by now.
And what brought you out here to Hawaii, and what has kept you here for these last 12 years?
I originally got recruited for a sport in college to come to the United States. Got some scholarship offers back then, and after I graduated high school in Germany, I decided I wanted to leave my hometown, wanted to learn English, and also continuing the sport that I competed, because in Germany it's really difficult to do that after you graduate in high school. You usually have a decision to make. Either you're gonna go right into like a job training, or you're gonna go to the university to study. But the way it is regulated in the US, where you can be a student athlete and you can compete in a sport while studying simultaneously, that was a big factor for me to come here. So it allowed me to be both a student and still a pretty professional athlete.
That's such a great balance that you've been able to strike. I'm so curious because a lot of people, when they graduate, they move home. But you have stayed here and you've built a life here. You have a wide network of people who I guess are in some ways like your second family. What have you done in order to stay and really live the life that you enjoy here in the islands?
I guess it came down really to that underlying desire of mine to stay and not to go back, and trying to see what are pathways in order to achieve that. As an international student, you have the opportunity after you graduate to get what they call an OPT, an optional practical training, where you can work in the field related to your studies for 1 year for 365 days in the US. And so I chose Hawaii to stay because I really liked it here, and I got a job. And I always wanted to go back to school because I was interested in academia and interested in research and going further into my field. And so I ended up going back into graduate school at the time. And that enabled me to apply for another student visa and to extend my path here being a student, and then along the way a graduate assistant, and all of that related to school. And that allowed me to stay until now.
And one question I ask everyone in these interviews is, what makes your heart beat? What is that fire behind everything that you do?
To me, it's the ocean. I think that's why I'm calling Hawaii my home, being surrounded by the deep blue and be active within the water. So really, my passion is like diving underwater and experiencing the quietness and seeing the fishes and, diving into another world, so to speak.
As I'm seeing you talk about the ocean, you have this look in your eyes like you're off in a dream. Tell me more.
It almost is like a dream, right? When you go out into the ocean and you're going to go for some diving or some free diving or some swimming, you get to experience the beautiful marine life. Here on Oahu, during the summertime, the North Shore becomes very calm and you can swim along the shores. And you cannot do that in Germany right now. It's like minus 10, minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Super cold, snowy, etc. You can do other things there, but I think I got really spoiled by now with being in the warmth and being able to be in the water, which I really enjoy.
You are one of the hardest working people that I know, and you're very good at scheduling things. And when you plan something, you're good at being accountable to it. To me, that kind of points to another characteristic of yours, is that you're incredibly organized, practical, economical. In order to live in Hawaii, we do have to take into account like the cost of living alongside everybody else who is still living here, whether you're kama'aina or moved here for school and decided to stay. And so the heart of this conversation, while we did touch on the ocean, I really wanted to ask you on this podcast to talk about money saving and your life hacks for making things work financially. Can we get into some of those things on how you build a meaningful, fun life here while also being very mindful of costs and resources?
It's a very complex topic, and I think there are several elements in there. And you know me, and I'm a very structured and organized person, and I think it has both personal reasons as well as cultural reasons from how I grew up. I'm generally a very organized and clean person. That's how my brain works. That's how I got raised. That can be both a curse as well as something from heaven. If you overdo it with being organized, then it can become more problematic or even create more issues than if you're somebody who doesn't really care and lives like day to day. A big portion is my German heritage and how I grew up, how I was raised by my parents and by my grandparents. Germans are well known to be structured and efficient and systematic. Nowadays less than 20, 30 years ago, but during the time that I was raised, I believe it was still a general standard that where younger people held accountable for when they were raised. That just as an intro to the topic.
Thank you. I left it very open-ended and figured we would dive into different facets of how you became the way you are. You were talking a bit about your family history and certain habits and mindsets that you've adopted into your own life. Could you share a bit more about that?
My family is coming from East Germany, and before 1989, before the wall came down and then Germany got reunited, I think what a lot of Americans seem to not be aware of, that East Germany used to be part of a larger network from the East, not specifically the Soviet Union, but it was heavily influenced by the Soviet Union. And while I wouldn't necessarily say that was communism that East Germans lived in, it was certainly a form of socialism. People had to use resources very efficiently and resourceful, whether it was about materialistic things or food or anything with life. People didn't have a lot, and that's the message that I received from my grandparents and parents. Even though I was born after the reunification, I was still heavily impacted by the behavior of my grandparents and parents. I remember things in my childhood, like if I would go down at the basement from my grandparents' house, there would be all those very nicely organized shelves with all different type of things in there. If you had a CD player or a radio and it broke, it was not normal to go to the next door and buy a new one. Like, you tried to repair it. If your belt ripped apart, you would have several other items that were made out of leather that you could repair the belt with.
Earlier, you were sharing about how your father, when he was younger, would receive like Christmas packages, and you made an interesting comment about that.
So he would mention that it was special for him to receive a Christmas package from his aunt. So let's say he got a package for Christmas and the package contained a banana, and that was super special for him because in the German Democratic Republic you were not able to get bananas in a grocery store because you did not have those imported items. Back then people would harvest the apples and pears in the summer and they would can them, and then they would eat them through the winter, getting those canned glasses from the basements. I also remember how my grandparents waited for years to get their car because you had to sign up and you had to be on a list, and not just was it a financial burden, but there also weren't that many cars that got released every year. Pretty modest lifestyle.
I think we're touching on a really interesting topic because for so many of us in our families, the generations that came before us were incredibly creative with how they used things because they had to be out of necessity. And for you, it's also grounded in German culture. When I visit family and friends on some of the other islands where the barge doesn't come as frequently as it comes to Oahu, there's just fewer opportunities for things to come to the island. So they're really good about using what's around, whether it's fishing or hunting or just reusing and repairing things consistently. And so I love that we're talking about this idea because it's sustainability and utility of things. Going into that topic a little deeper, I remember one time you hosted a barbecue at your house. And you had so many creative little facets of your room where you had fans in the corners and then all of your swim goggles. I don't know if they were color coded. Your closet was so organized. It was like the most beautiful closet I've ever seen, but you had hand built everything, like your desk. Can you describe how you got to that point of, making your space so utilitarian?
Yeah, so it's one more time an accumulation of different aspects here that you just referred to. One is my need for perfection, and I think that's just fair for the listeners to understand. I personally got diagnosed with OCD, obsessive-compulsive disorder. And what it does is it requires me to pay overly strong attention to details and to being organized. So it's not solely what we just talked about with my German heritage, but it's also that additional drive for me to be overly clean and organized. Even in Germany, when I was in middle school, high school, and we would go into training camps and we would have roommates that we shared a room with, and then we have our coaches doing the check at night at 10 p.m. that everybody is in bed and sleeping. The coach would come in, and we were 3 boys in the room, and everybody had a piece of a closet and a bed and a nightstand. And I remember how my coach actually reached out to my parents saying how interesting it is that my side was always clean of the room. You had those typical boys behavior where everyone lays everywhere, and then you see the nightstand on my bed and everything's organized and put on hooks. As for the room, what you mentioned, I just like to build, and my dad and grandpa also were big into building, and when I was little we were building like functional stuff together, whether it's a desk or whether it's like a water robe or anything. So I really like to build things out of wood. Luckily, I have a very lenient landlord here that is super accommodating when it comes to what you like to do in the room in terms of individualizing it. So I was able to put hanging shelves up, put a wooden sideboard around my windows to have indirect lighting throughout the room. And the hallway, we have a very tiny little kitchen. So in order to utilize the space better, I was trying to make a concept, like how can you use that hallway to make it a somewhat functional kitchen? It's so tiny, like I like to cook. Imagine you live in a motorhome and you need to make things as efficient and perfect in there to utilize things the best way they are. That's just in me. And that's just a drive that I have to make things efficient and functional. Yeah.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you about the fans themselves because it felt like they were strategically placed in the room to maximize circulation or airflow. I could have spent an hour just observing everything you had.
Yeah, there's some truth to it. Yes, the airflow as well. I don't like to have too much airflow around. Okay, I have to add to that. In Germany, we don't have fans. So I started to learn liking fans in Hawaii. It was important is the white noise that a fan creates when you sleep. In Germany, usually people are very strict about not being loud anymore after 10 p.m., like neighbors or parties. Or here in Hawaii, it's a little bit different. You may have some neighbors that are having barbecues till 2 at night. So there's all this noise that comes in. You have to have your window open anyway to get fresh air at night. What I did is I got used to having a fan to create white noise so I can sleep well.
See, I knew there was always going to be a deeper reason.
Yes.
So let's really get into the utility of used things. How do you maximize usage of things? Where are you finding these items? Tell me more about that part of your life.
I think the biggest aha effect, so to speak, that I could immediately think of is what's happening at the university here on a semi-annual basis as for when students move out their dormitories. I was shocked when I first witnessed when the students move out of their dorms, either in the winter time or in the summertime, and they're going to go back to the mainland or they're going to leave for half a year or whatever. They're going to leave behind an enormous amount of not trash, but items that are in totally good shape, but are just being placed in large dumpsters right in front of the dorms. And over the years, I made it a routine to take time out of the nights during those finals weeks, get in my car or on my moped, and I'm going to go down there to the dorms and I'm going to go adventure diving. You may call it dumpster diving. And I'm going to jump into those massive big dumpsters, and I'm gonna see what items I can find to still utilize myself, or to then trade for other items, for example, through Facebook Marketplace. So within those years, I've come across incredibly valuable items and very useful items that I was able to save that otherwise would have ended up straight in the dumpster machine or been erased or destroyed. I'm also not just doing that as a form of being efficient or resourceful. I'm actually having a massive amount of joy in doing that. I'm going to put my headlamp on. I'm going to put my gloves on, long sleeves so I don't hurt myself. And then I'm going to go through all those items that are being left behind. And I'm very joyful with those type of activities. Yeah, I feel really good about not throwing this stuff away and still being able to utilize it or use it. That really fills my heart with, oh, you've done something good here, and it feels good to achieve something without spending a whole amount of money. It's something that I wanted to have anyway. Yeah.
I love hearing about niche hobbies, and I feel like one of your hobbies is like full-on dumpster diving.
Well, there's a story that I like to think back to. We have a very big soccer club in our city with a large stadium, capacity 40 to 50,000 people. And when we had those soccer games as a child, I would buy myself a ticket to get into the stadium. And then I would be the boy who would run through 90 minutes or throughout 120 minutes, including the break, running through the stadium with a large backpack and gloves on my hands. And I would go through each trash can to get out the cups that then have deposit on each of them. So when you buy a beer or some beverage in those stadiums, you always have to buy an additional cup that had 50 cents or even €1 deposit for the cup. And what often happened is that people would just throw the cups into those trash cans instead of returning them, because there were long lines on each of those returning points. So what I did was running around, literally diving head to toe into those trash cans and come back out with 20, 30 cups in my hands. And then there were games where I ended up returning 400 to 500 cups per game, making a good amount of side hustle as a little child to basically get myself an item that I always wanted to have, a new wetsuit, or get myself a new bicycle, this type of stuff. All it took really was me being okay with breaking the narrative of not putting your hand into a dumpster or into a trash can. I know that this is not well seen at, and there were people who looked at me and be like, oh my gosh, look at this kid. He's like putting his hand into a trash can that was full of currywurst with sauce and fries in it. And nonetheless, at the end, I didn't care. I wouldn't care about that. At the end of the day, I was the one who can buy myself a new swimsuit. And I was really happy about that, because otherwise I didn't have the means to do so.
I'm very curious, what are the kinds of things that you're finding in the dumpsters?
Literally anything. Appliances, microwaves, you have all type of different kitchen utensils, you have electrical devices. One semester found an iPad, like really good brand clothing that students would throw away, probably because luggage is too heavy to take with them. What you can do, you could take some items that you really like, and then you wash them and you put them a few cycles in your wash machine, and it comes out as like almost a new clothing item that usually you would pay like $100 for that particular jeans or cotton shirt. There's also a lot of unused food. I know with food you have to be careful, but a lot of food partially not even opened. I'm able to utilize every time my kitchen is going to be filled after those weeks of students moving out, like unopened packs of rice, unopened packs of pasta, cans, sauces for pasta, like all of that you find in there, and basically lasts you for 3 or 4 months to feed you through without you ever touching the grocery store. Of course you do for fresh items, but it's an immense help to make it through. And all of that came out of a dumpster, but was still, everything was packed in bags and not even seen dirt or anything that people would be afraid of when they go into such a dumpster. I've also had other items that you have to smile about too. Yeah.
I want to hear other things that you're finding. I know that there's like tons of mini fridges. You said microwaves. I've been on Instagram before, like scrolling through people who dumpster dive regularly in other cities, other parts of the world, and get groceries, especially colder climates where like the food doesn't go bad right away. But you can save thousands of dollars and never go grocery shopping in certain places.
There are a lot of fridges that are out there, and the university just last year appeared to create a new rule in their dormitories where they now provide the fridges and the microwaves to the students. While 2 years ago, I believe, that was not the case, where you have those students buying those heavy appliances at the beginning of the semester. They're going to study here for 1 semester. They're going to leave the island. Of course, where does it end up? It ends up in the dumpster because either they're really wealthy or they're in their finals week and don't have time to sell stuff online. So you see a lot of fridges, probably 100 in front of each dormitory that's going to get thrown away.
What other interesting things have you found?
I found a fully functioning electrical e-scooter. I looked it up on Amazon. It sold for $900. I still have it. I still use it. It's very nice, but it just shows the amount of value that's being thrown out. I found some diaries in there. Some diaries written from freshman college student complaining about how hard their freshman life is or what's happening in their school time. I got those items because sometimes it's hard to get all those miscellaneous things out right away in the dumpster.
Yeah.
So what I do then is I would take like a bag from which I think is somewhat quality items in there. I would take that bag with me and then I would go through it at my place and then throw out what I don't need. Some of those diaries, I was like, oh, okay, interesting. Probably wouldn't expect that somebody still will read through this. Otherwise you wouldn't have put that into that dumpster here. Yeah.
So you just have some new bedtime reading once in a while?
No, I didn't keep it. I was just like reading it while I was going through the stuff. Yeah.
If they knew, I wonder if they would be embarrassed.
I'm sure they would be. Yeah.
Do you have other life hacks for things like saving money on groceries or saving money on gas?
Goes back to what we discussed before with how I grew up. I learned from my grandma that different grocery stores have different sales for different items. Something that I learned was like to observe going to the grocery stores, making lists of items. How much does a butter cost here versus how much does a butter cost there? Foodland, Safeway, Walmart, Costco, Sam's Club. You will see and you will find that not all items are cheapest at one place. Like even Safeway, that is consideredly high priced, has really good offers and really good items that you only can get at Safeway that is significantly cheaper than Walmart. So what I do is I try to analyze and see which items can I buy where. And although that has a certain amount of time included with it, with my limited means as a graduate student, it still comes out to a good amount for me to live comfortably then. I probably save per grocery run like $20 to $30 by just picking the right places to buy groceries. And if you plan it out well, it doesn't have to be too time consuming. If you go to one place one day and to the other place next week, you just have to plan it ahead and be like, okay, I know that milk is $1.50 cheaper here than at the other grocery store. I know that the milk is going to be lasting the next 1.5 months as for expiration date. I'm going to buy on this shopping trip the double amount of milk because I know next week I won't go to that grocery store anymore. So it all comes down to planning ahead and again being efficient about making it work. As for grocery shopping, I do have a rigorous note-taking for my finances with spreadsheets that I somehow taught myself. I think the origination of that behavior came from my dad. When I was little, I got pocket money. I would get 25 cents a week from my dad. And then it would increase to 50 cents and to €1 or €2 a week. And so that would help me buy something that I wanted to at the end of the year. Even though the amount of money was not very large, he was very formal about his procedures on teaching me on how to be accountable. So I had to have a pocket money book. In that pocket money book, I had to write down every week with proper date, proper format, and putting in €0.5, like 50 cents. Then there was 2 other columns that was one signature of my dad that handed me the money and one signature of me that received the money. So we could track down if we forgot a week and say, oh, I didn't get it for 2 weeks. Now look in the book. Okay, that's how it is. Instead of arbitrarily saying, oh, I forgot, did I give you the pocket money last week? And I think this type of behavior, I then transitioned into my own expenses and calculating my monthly expenses in a spreadsheet and writing down, like subdividing it into groceries or other expenses. I know nowadays a lot of apps do that, but even before those apps came out that help you get your costs, I already have it all in spreadsheets anyway. I did lose a little bit of my being rigorous about it. Like I always wanted to have the receipt. I always learned to collect paper receipts, collect them, and at the end of the month make my spreadsheet with those items. By now I became more loose, which I think is a good thing because you can overdo it easily.
I also appreciate you sharing about you working through those things because any mental health challenge can be very difficult. And I didn't realize that that was something that you were working through either, because I just know you as a very organized, intentional person. So thank you for also sharing that other layer to your life.
Oh,
that
absolutely.
I wasn't aware of.
Yeah, there are benefits and disadvantages to this type of lifestyle. I think the biggest benefit would be that I'm comfortably here in Hawaii and not feeling like I'm missing out on things. And I think that is enabled by what I just described in that conversation. Yeah.
From this conversation, I've gathered that the ocean brings you joy and dumpster diving brings you joy.
Yeah. My therapist was like, what's happening to you this week? Why are you so cheerful? My therapist actually noticed that this must be one of my big hobbies. I haven't been in a good mood mentally. And then all of a sudden he was struck by the fact that I was all cheerful when we met the following week. And it was related to me being able to like acquire really cool items from the dumpsters and being able to reutilize things. It's actually quite joyful for me to do that. Yeah.
You're finding new things, you're reducing waste, you're giving new life to things that would have just been trash. So there is this sort of like resourcefulness, usefulness that you probably feel inherently in being active and finding stuff. It's like a treasure hunt.
It really is a treasure hunt. And when you load up your car or your moped, bring it back home and sort through things, you bring those bags with you later on. It's like a treasure search. Those shows where you buy those storage units, not knowing what's in there.
That's right.
That's exactly how I feel in this moment. Maybe that's another iPad in there. Maybe that's another cool item that I didn't even know I needed. Maybe it's all just trash. Maybe it's all just like old notes or diaries in there. Who knows?
One man's trash is another man's treasure. So
there you go.
This has been really enjoyable for me. Fascinating. We covered so many different topics, all under the umbrella of in order for you to live here in Hawaii, you're doing certain things to address your own cost of living and saving money and being resourceful. And so that brought us through almost like a
valleys and hills.
Hills and valleys, the landscape of your life and some of your routines and tricks. So thank you for sharing so openly. Not everyone is as comfortable sharing about these things, but you have such a unique mindset and perspective that I was like, I would love to just pick your brain about how you got into all of this in the first place. So clearly there are many layers to your life. You're like an onion, Otto.
With several layers, that's for sure. I think the moral of the story is it's good to be resourceful and it's good to be as particular and efficient as a German can be, but it's also good to not overdo it. So I think a good balance in between is probably the best advice I can give out to other people. But going back to your point, I am super happy that I'm here in Hawaii, and I'm happy that I made it through in Hawaii the past 12 years for the majority of the duration as a student. And even though as a graduate student you have some type of accommodation, you live month to month on basically a border between paying rent, paying for groceries, paying for other expenses. And me being able to maneuver through it without additional sources from back home is worth it and makes me smile because tomorrow I may go back in the ocean, and all of that because I'm able to be here and not struggle, so to speak.
Well, mahalo nui. And how do I say, is it danke in German?
It's danke. Yeah.
Danke. Thank you for being here, and mahalo everyone for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
Thank you very much, Molly. Appreciate it.
Aloha.